All right, Paul, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Awesome. Well, this is great. Look at the team out there. We've got a lot of people on the WebEx here. Appreciate it. And just wanted to do a quick introduction for myself. And then what I think we'll do is when we go through the roundtable, Julia and Nicole, we'll do the introductions during that period. But it's really great to have everybody taking an hour out of their day. I know whenever we're on calls or we're away from our desk, you just hear the emails pounding and increasing in your inbox. So please enjoy your sandwich. Try to put that aside and let's get started here. So a couple things from a housekeeping perspective. Number one, I'd really like to thank the customers that are on the WebEx. It's always tough to get away. We know that, and really want to thank Rumsey for giving us an opportunity to partner up and to take you through some of the discussion points around security, why to secure, how to secure. So really appreciate the opportunity, and also thanking the Cisco team, although they had less of a choice. I kind of make them come to these, whether they like it or not. And just a couple of housekeeping notes here. If you have questions, feel free. If you look at the very bottom of the WebEx, and if you have any challenges with those, please just let me know. You can come off mute. And if you have questions for us that are of a confidential nature, please put them into the chat. The chat will only be sent to the people you pick. So if you pick the panelists, those questions will be sent to us. If you have a generic question, you can also post that in the Q&A. We'll make sure that we give you a summary of what the questions were, obviously sanitized, uh, after the session is over, and then a follow-up email from the Rumsey folks. That makes sense? Awesome. The other the other thing I was going to mention is most of the folks here are on mute. It's pretty easy to come off mute if you have a question. You can just right click on yourself and unmute, or at the very bottom of the screen, I think you can also click unmute as well. So feel free to come off of mute if you have a question. The other thing you can do, and there's all kinds of features in this, it's like running an airplane in this WebEx. So if you look at the very bottom of your screen too, you'll see a little happy face. That's a reaction. When you click on that, you can raise your hand there. You can also, I mean, let's all have fun with this. I guess you can either put a thumbs up or a thumbs down, hand clap. There's some reactions you can apply there. The thumbs down would hurt our feelings, but that's okay. So feel free to be interactive, either verbally or through reactions. And the other thing is that at the very bottom picture of this presentation, I'll show you that it actually is a real helmet. I'll put it over my headset. Is that we do have an IoT gift package for the winner of a quiz question. The IoT package consists of a Cisco IoT helmet, which I know is great for working and also for playing if you happen to be playing outside. It does come with a Cisco mug, which the mug is actually pretty cool. A little charger guy or gal, a light that you can affix to your PC now to make you look even more beautiful than you are when you're on a WebEx, and a little brush to the left-hand side. I think it's to clean the display of your computer. I use it to actually, keep myself looking fresh throughout the day. So there's going to be a quiz question based on the content of this session. So focus in. I'll ask the quiz question. And the first person after the quiz question who hits us with a chat will win that, and it'll be drop shipped to their location. Okay, that's housekeeping. Any questions from the presenters or the customers? All right, I think that's good. So thanks again, and really, the folks at Rumsey asked, let's get together since we're awesome. We got the thumbs up. That we're partnering up on solutions with their customer base. They said, we've heard a lot about people talking about the challenges, the security issues. I just talked about the State Department getting a D. I know we talked about ransomware at some of the manufacturing locations throughout the U.S. And when I was talking to Jim, he said, that's all great, Paul, but can we have a roundtable where we talk about what are the first steps you take to really look at your overall industrial security? How do you enhance your existing security with maybe your IT tools, the ones that are in your carpeted area? How do you expand those into your OT environment? And then have a live panel from a Q&A perspective. So, I think we all know, and we get hit over the head that, security is top of mind. And really what we're hoping for is to work collaboratively with you and the Rumsey folks and some of our Cisco teammates here to work on security hygiene. Somehow I heard that term security hygiene always makes me think about going to the dentist twice a year. But I think the important thing here is to really focus in with your collaborative team and make sure you do have that every 6-month check-in and look at the right solutions for your environment. So we have an unbelievable panel today from Rumsey and from Cisco. The folks from Cisco are really, we have team members throughout the country, but we do have a team up here in the Northeast. So the one person I'm going to bring up here first on the panel is Logan Johnson. And if you're reading from your script here from the PDF invite, Logan comes to us as a Cisco Business Development Manager, and he is the Business Development Manager for a product called CyberVision. Cisco acquired a product called Centrio, I think about 2 years ago, and now it's part of our IoT go-to-market portfolio. So two things, Nicole, if you wanted to, you could, I think, stop sharing the presentation.
Okay, no problem. Let me do that.
That would be great. So everybody can, yeah. I mean, not that everybody really wants to see me and my kangaroo here in the background, but as we ask the question, you want to see the look on the people's faces if they're prepared. So Logan, one of the things that we talked about is, just in general, how are the bad guys, the bad actors, how are they getting in? Is it through the IT carpeted environment? Are they hacking into computers and then making their way over to the manufacturing environment, or is it the other way?
Hey, Paul. Thanks, and thanks for the introduction. That's a great question, and a question we're often asked by customers. So the majority of attacks targeting ICS systems have an entry point that starts from the IT enterprise and generally not directly on OT equipment. So an example would be utilizing social engineering to craft a savvy phishing attack in order to dupe an unsuspecting employee. Once infected and with the right administrative privileges gained, the attackers are able to move laterally throughout the network in order to further achieve their goal. So most of us on this call have heard of the infamous Stuxnet attack, right? Extremely rare. This attack actually had to be deployed using flash drives because the systems controlling the centrifuges were air-gapped and not connected to the internet. So physical access was required. Nowadays, many ICS systems are set up to allow remote access. For example, the Ukraine power grid attack was successful again by taking the route of infecting an IT system and moving to exploit a vulnerable remote access backdoor that was set up for maintenance purposes. In fact, the last time we actually had a publicly acknowledged attack specifically on OT technology was back in 2017. This actually took place in Saudi Arabia and was a specific attack on a safety instrumentation system. Excuse me. This was attributed to some Russian actors. So, if you fast forward to 2018, again, there was 4 oil pipelines that were shut down by attacks, and this was unique in fact that it was actually done by shutting down a cloud-based service. So something I want to recognize and emphasize here is you don't actually have to touch a pipeline itself to cause a pipeline to stop. And this couldn't be more evident than the recent Colonial pipeline attack back in May. Attackers were able to lock up the data necessary for Colonial to build their customers for energy. And since they couldn't build their customers, they weren't going to deliver energy. So the point I'm trying to make here is that attack vectors are broad and growing, and you must have a robust multi-layer security strategy that covers both IT and OT systems.
Wow, I'm going to give you an A+ on that answer. And so for the audience too, I'm new to this technology, so some of the points here are really generated from just in general, what's happening from the carpeted and the non-carpeted environment. So I'm gonna move over to. I also feel a little bit like it's the Hollywood Squares, but we have like 50 people on here. Circle gets a square. So the next question is going to go over to Dan Behrens. Dan is a Cisco technical marketing engineer, and his focus is in IoT connectivity. So Dan, a question for you is that, me being new to this market too, network visibility. In general, you can't protect if you can't see it. And the more you see, really, the more you know. And it's not just for IoT as well, but are you recommending that customers leverage their corporate IT security assets, software and hardware to gain visibility of those industrial assets? Or do customers' industrial teams go it alone to deploy security solutions? How do you see that in the customers that you work with?
Yeah, so admittedly, there's probably an hour's worth of discussion just in that question, right? But frankly, a lot of what Logan just discussed as far as the typical entry points and the way we see some of these different types of attacks make their way into the operational space, there is no way to really suggest that you could have a solution that only protects half and helps on the other half, right? So, realistically speaking, the need for IT and operations to work together when developing solutions and providing capabilities in terms of segmenting these networks. Frankly, network connectivity in industrial environments was often a necessity from a control standpoint. And the goal was really just to get it connected, get it communicating, and move on. And so there's a lot of large flat networks. Everyone can talk to everyone. And so in many cases, it's the contractor showing up with an infected laptop. And unfortunately, that laptop has something on it that is able to quickly spread like wildfire in the environment. And so to your point, realistically speaking, industrial assets don't behave and don't have the exact same look and feel as our typical IT type devices. Realistically speaking, my connectivity is usually going to be accessing my web applications or checking my email, whereas typically in an industrial environment, it's the control systems communicating amongst themselves and PLCs communicating to I/O and things of that nature, and just using different protocols and different technologies. And so realistically, the ability to use tools that were built specifically to understand and decode those protocols can really help gain that full visibility. Not only understanding who's talking to who, but exactly what they're saying to each other, exactly what types of devices are these, what firmware are they running, what hardware are they, being able to recognize the vulnerabilities that exist inside these environments. And so circling back to your exact question, it really does take both sides of the organization to really work together to start gaining that base level understanding of what's out there, and then start providing and developing security protocols around that.
Hey, Dan, can I ask you a follow-up question to that, if you don't mind? So we often have a lot of customers that kind of get into this back and forth between the plant engineers and the IT group, because IT wants to deploy their traditional IT tools onto the plant floor, and the OT team is scared of this and wants to deploy traditional OT tools on the plant floor. What happens when you do one or the other? And usually that's kind of where a lot of folks we see stop. They get stuck in, do we use an IT tool or do we use an OT tool? What do we do? Sometimes somebody wins. If one of the two groups win and they don't collaborate on this, what's the downside of that? What have you seen? Like if you take a pure IT tool and you try to apply it to the plant floor, what often happens?
Yeah, so first of all, I will suggest that there's not necessarily a technology that's going to solve all the issues, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot of people and process that need to be part of this. And so even outside of who wins, so to speak, realistically, both organizations are going to need to work together, because there's a very rich set of capabilities and technologies available on the IT side, but there's also a very rich set of capabilities and understanding on the operations side. And frankly, no one side of that equation necessarily is going to have all the answers. But to directly answer your question, in many cases when we see environments where, either because of an edict coming from on high or whatever it may be, if the IT department, for example, gets the opportunity to go in and maybe it's an organization where there's a lot of friction between the two teams, so IT tries to take over, so to speak, usually it fails, right? There's just, as an IT person, you may have the ability to get a rich understanding of what a PLC is, but the P part's programmable, right? The way that device is going to behave in your environment is very specific to the process, and in some cases, maybe specific to the time of day. So, the operations team is really the team that has that rich understanding of what the process is doing and what parts are implemented in that. And so, frankly, any one side doesn't necessarily have the full scope and the full capabilities to deploy a holistic solution in the right way.
Fair.
Julia,
That's what I figured. Sense.
What might be interesting, Julia, is like the folks on the call here. One of the things I heard, and that was what you were talking about, is some organizations have a pretty good relationship, IT to OT. They break bread. Some of them are more like a Steelers fan versus an Eagles fan, maybe, where they don't get along. So based on the emotion, the reactions here that are available, for those folks that do have a good working relationship with their IT counterparts, put a thumbs up. And those that don't, if you could put a thumbs down, just so we can get a quick look as we move on to the next subject, would be kind of interesting to see that. So my next question is to Julia. I have a feeling, okay, this is good. All right. Julia.
Just kidding.
That's cool. Thank you. It's just good to see feedback. Now, I think, Julia, most people on the WebEx here know who you are, but I'm going to introduce you. This is Julia Santagata, and she is the Rumsey Director of Networking, Automation, and Information Solutions. And the question I had for you, Julia, is that so you talked a little bit about it. Most customers understand that there is risk. So what has prevented some from taking action? Is it legacy of equipment, human intervention, avoiding downtime? What are you hearing from your customers?
Good question, Paul. So honestly, we get to speak to a lot of customers about security, and the number one reason that many of them haven't taken action is they're just overwhelmed by where to start. So if you're on this call and one of the reasons you joined is because you're struggling with where to start or what to do first, you're not alone. That's my first kind of comment to everybody. I think most of the folks on the phone know me, and I know a lot of you guys, and we're engineers, right? We want a point solution. Management wants a guarantee when they invest money, and we want a point solution. We want to buy X and we want it to solve Y. And that's just not what security is about. And so I often talk to a lot of folks in manufacturing, and I've spent 20 years working in the manufacturing industry, and the last 8 specific to networking in the manufacturing industry, is that the first thing we suggest to everybody, no matter what side you're on, kind of IT or operations, is that you start talking to everybody in your organization about making a move with security and knowing that it's a journey, that it's really important that you start taking step number 1 and the organization gets their head out of the sand, doesn't let it be overwhelming, and you take step number 1, but in doing that, you publicly acknowledge within your company, your steps are to improve your security posture. It's not to solve every possible security issue that's out there, and that this is going to be a journey and it's going to be ongoing. When you as an organization embrace security, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's I'm going to do 1 and then I'm going to do 2, and security is going to keep changing. The threats are going to keep changing, and just having that acknowledgement and awareness within the organization. So I think often people talk about visibility as being a great first step. I 100% agree. Visibility is a great first step, but it's just step number 1. And to early on say, I'm not going to be overwhelmed by this. I'm going to take multiple steps. It's not going to be a point solution. That has helped a lot of our customers who haven't taken action yet start taking action. And then once they get down this path, like maybe the first step is visibility and understanding what you have, communicating to what and where your vulnerabilities are. But then realize with that acknowledgement of what your vulnerabilities are, that it's a layer, right? It's an onion. Security is an onion. You have to peel back the layers, and some might be short-term actions and some might be longer-term actions, like policies that I think Logan mentioned early on. And that can't overwhelm you either. You're always focused on improving your posture. So that's my long-winded answer, Paul, to your question. Why haven't some customers taken action? Most of the customers I've talked to, they don't, because they feel like it's overwhelming. And everybody wants a 1 + 1 = 2, but security is really a journey. And the ones that have started taking action have recognized that and talk often about their security journey and improving their security posture as opposed to solving security. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Sorry, you still out there, Paul? Anybody?
So it's always good when the audio drops where you said that makes sense. I think it was Paul's audio dropping.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, to anybody else on the phone, I guess, did that make sense?
It definitely makes
security can be overwhelming, but that's often why we see folks not taking action. But the most important thing is to acknowledge that journey.
Yeah, it's funny because we keep hearing, we didn't rehearse this, but we keep hearing the same themes over and over again. And I'll just step in for Paul. My name is John Crowley. I work for Cisco IoT PSS. And what we see is just what you said, who's responsible for it? Is it IT owning it? Is it OT? Where's the budget coming from? Who's got the responsibility for the implementation? And then more importantly, who's going to maintain whatever we put in? And like you said, it is a journey in the sense that, there's no silver bullet. I think Dan said that. There's great products out there that can do a number of things, and it's really about the business priorities, where you're going and how you get there and how you're going to get to secure the environment. So yeah, that's what I would echo from what you said.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
We can, Paul.
Now, that's what happens when you have an old video unit. So I'm back. So I heard the ending of that. One of the things I was going to ask Rocky as we move on here is, Rocky Smith is a Cisco Senior Solutions Architect. And one of the things I noticed with a customer that we were talking to out in, I think it was in Minnesota, was that the OT team was focused on getting data and doing some analytics about production and waste and yield. And their big challenge was that the IT team had put together a security solution that made it impossible to get that data over to the carpeted area to the analysts that were going to be able to help them. So, Rocky, my question is, how do you bring IT and OT together? And then do you have any good stories around that? And especially when you talk about telling people there's going to be, less downtime. How's your approach to that? What's a good approach?
Yeah, and I think that's really an important question because it's interesting. And John was just commenting that we've had, very common themes so far, as we're walking through these discussions. And, I think as we look at, and I'll just take a step back and sort of reinforce something Julia said that this is a journey that is important to frame it in that light. One of the worst things that I think we could do is go to OT or go to IT, either one, and sort of throw up the end solution and say, here, this is it, do this. I really think we have to look at it in terms of where are they, what do they have, and where do they go. But I think step one on that journey is getting IT and OT into the same room, and from a process perspective, right? And so because you want buy-in from all the stakeholders, I think everybody has a part to play. The operational technology folks who are looking at those operational tools and have the specific operational care abouts, they'll realize and they'll tell you that most of their threat vectors are coming through the IT network, right? And we all, I think, hopefully at this point realize that the proper next step is not to unplug the network and air gap it completely. That creates more problems, just like you were talking about, Paul, than it solves. And so we do want to do, as we move through the journey, proper isolation, and we do want to do proper, proper remediation steps, but we don't want to make it so that we can't kind of bring everybody together and we can't do the business that we're trying to do. And when we do bring IT and OT together, it is interesting. Different customers have vastly different perspectives, and I love the fact, Paul, that you had the thumbs up, thumbs down, earlier, and it looked like it was about an even split, right? And that's been my example as my experience as well out in the field. That I've gone into customers and from day one, we've done a workshop with IT in the room, with OT in the room, with the various departments. Everybody presents their perspective. Everybody's listening to what the others have to say, and there's sort of somebody overall guiding the conversation. Those have been very productive. I've also had conversations where I've walked into, talking to the OT folks, and they've told me, if you talk to the IT folks, we'll stop talking to you, right? And that's kind of the conversation, right? It's so contentious that it's competitive even, and they're not sort of unified. So finding some way to get IT and OT into the same room to kind of come together is super important and super critical when we're going to look at the next steps of the journey that we've already talked about a little bit, which are things like doing an asset discovery, figuring out what you have, understanding what is your risk profile before you understand how to secure it, then do proper segmentation and isolation while allowing things like secure remote access, for example, which has been a huge topic in the past year and a half or so, but can be done properly. And then that process is something that can be done without a bunch of downtime or disruption. It simply just takes planning and things like that to make sure that you can walk through it. So I'll take a breath there, Paul. Hopefully that helps add some context.
For me, it does. How about for the folks out there on the call? Do you think so far there may be some thoughts around how to get your IT and OT teams together by leveraging Julia or some of the things we're talking about? Any thumbs up for that so far? We'll also do thumbs up at the end, but is this sparking any good ideas or thoughts? I mean, we could always put a lunch together for the IT and OT teams. That food brings people together, but and it reminds me of when I worked at the highway department as a kid. I worked the highway department as a kid, and it was split down the middle. Some people like Fords and some people like Chevys. So, to get people in the room and not call their baby ugly, I think sounds like one of the social aspects of IoT. So thanks, Rocky. I know that John jumped in, but I wanted to give a proper introduction to Mr. John Crowley. He is a sales specialist with our Internet of Things group at Cisco. He's located up here in the Northeast, but again, the great thing about working with Rumsey and the team out here is that we're all a warm blanket. We all work together, and these resources and these experiences and working with customer stories are all available to you to help you in your journey. So, John, the question I had to you is, you may have answered a little bit, but what are some of the customer objections when you're sitting down with a OT team or an IT team when they're looking at a security project?
Yeah, I kind of jumped on Julia's question answer to that, and basically said, really has to do with the responsibility for many years, right? In the OT side of the house, when they saw security coming, they're like, "Uh-oh, here the line's going to go down if we let security in the house," right? So it really is that mirroring of who's responsible for what. Where's the budget coming from? When we really get down to brass tacks and we do get together, all of a sudden OT says, well, IT, you guys are going to provide the funding for this, right? Because this is your initiative coming from the C office within the organization. So, and then the other big thing is a lot of times once we do provide that visibility and security for the plant, where's the resource and who's going to provide the updates to whatever we implement and make sure that it keeps running, because it really is only as good as you keep watching it and as you progress on that journey, right? So when we first begin talking to customers, a lot of times we start from scratch and say sure, we all know what a next generation firewall is in the DMZ, but did you also know that we can hook this policy back to segmentation and bring this all together? And it really is, and it becomes a learning experience for everybody. And then as we continue down the road, the bad guys, they get bad, and that's probably not the correct grammatic. They're bad every day and they get worse, right? So they're just trying to think of other ways, and it's up to companies like Rumsey and Cisco and others to stay ahead of it and figure out what we can do in order to minimize the impact and keep those lines up and running. So yeah, that's my long-winded version of the answer.
Hey, Julia, I had a question I wanted to ask you too. Is again, I'm relatively new to this space, about a year into it. And when you're sitting with customers, you may have talked about it, but just what are the first, second, and third steps as far as when you approach an opportunity? I think you're on mute, Julia.
You are right. I was indeed on mute. So we did talk a little bit about that. But to me, the first few steps are kind of as follows. One, develop the awareness within the organization that this is going to be a journey and everybody is on board collaboratively to start the journey. And I think most people are there now with IT and OT, but it's a journey, not a point solution. And then it's to establish some type of visibility into the network, the communications, and what your vulnerability posture is today, right? So we, as engineers, we would never imagine doing work on the plant floor without our electrical tools, without our SCADA system, without our HMI, without visibility into the control systems. And so many folks that we speak with don't have visibility into what's happening on the network and those vulnerabilities. And so that's step number one. Get the same type of visibility for your network and your vulnerabilities as you do for your control systems. And then once you have that, find a trusted partner to start the journey with. Because if it was as easy as just buying the latest firewall, everybody would have done it already. And so you really are going to need to find somebody that you can kind of hand in hand walk through, okay, this is what I've learned. I have visibility. This is what it's telling me. And then Now, what do I do with that? Short and longer term. There are going to be some short-term things you can do. It might be segmentation. It might be some firewalls. There are going to be things that you can do that will greatly improve your security posture. But there's also going to be longer-term things that somebody just mentioned around policy changes or access changes, not to a bad way, but just maybe using some of the technology that's out there, like Factory Talk Security's come a long way, tying that to your IT policies. That'll take time. That's something you should plan out. It's not going to be a 30-day project, but working with a partner that can help you with the short term and then help you start the journey on some of the longer term, and then just ensure you have that continued visibility and you're continuing to monitor your vulnerability postures so that you can always be peeling back the next layer of the onion. That's typically our suggestion for kind of the 1, 2, 3, what the process might look like for developing a security strategy.
So I like that. That addresses the fact that people are overwhelmed with this. You put together a process and a map of next steps and security hygiene. And I think, AJ, did you have a question? Looks like you're about to come on.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment as a customer. So I'm with Chemours, and so it took us, so has been mentioned that it's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. So we started to have some rituals that IT and OD. I'm on the control side, and then IT directors and other managers. We used to gather in one room and talk about the work our teams are working on, because OT generally doesn't know what the IT is working on, and vice versa. So we start to do those rituals, and then with the control systems, there are now servers and switches which used to be proprietary in the past. So the skill level on the IT side, on the OT side of the IT infrastructure, switches, and we use Cisco switches, and the servers. So it became apparent that I think we will need to share and seek help where help is needed from our IT brethren and sisters, and vice versa. So we start to have those discussions, and that has led to few things that now in our company we have at the very front. Some of this effort has to start from the top. That if there's no emphasis on it from the top, then it'll be fragmented effort. So we in our company we have a chief information security officer since the last 3 years. Because of all these ransomware issues which happen, maybe you shouldn't call it a blessing in disguise, but because of that, the company board has a lot of, I'm sure, I shouldn't say anxiety, but concern that how are we protecting our company against these things? Can those happen to us? So a lot of initiatives which are being driven are coming out of these unfortunate incidents which have happened. And and then we have IT/OT network. So we have rituals like we meet once a week and discuss things which overlap, IT/OT. And I think with our effort into Industry 4.0 efforts, there are a lot of those. So I guess it's just doesn't happen overnight. It's the realization and it's talking to each other, establishing trust, and I guess having the top leadership having value for this has been, in our case, has been of value. So just wanted to share that.
We appreciate that, AJ. Thank you for sharing. If somebody asked me about a lot of our customers, sorry,
I think we're getting a little feedback. Somebody, if call-in user 4 could mute, or if Nicole, you could mute call-in user 4 by right-clicking.
So I think if somebody had asked me 5 years ago how many of our customers would be in the boat that AJ just described, the support from the top, the monthly meetings or the collaboration, the continuous discussion between IT/OT, I would say it was probably less than 10%. I think, I'd applaud most of the folks on the phone, similar to AJ. I think the vast majority have taken those steps now. And I would say it's probably more 60-70% of the teams are starting to work together. And that's fantastic. I mean, that is, I'll put that as step 1A. I said, visibility and journey, but that is good. And I applaud what you guys have done there, AJ. And I think for the 20% that might still be on the phone, that is step 1A. And what you have there is something we should all strive to. Very nice.
Now, I have a question for the team to get everybody moving a little bit after they had their sandwich. How many of the customers out here have Cisco somewhere in their network, whether it's corporate or OT? Just raise your hand or give me a thumbs up just so we get a poll here. And I'm asking because what's really exciting about working with Rumsey is that we're kicking off our Cisco fiscal year and really focusing on helping the folks that have the thumbs up or not thumbs up to extend the enterprise. So Cisco is starting to gain market share in the OT environment because, quite frankly, when people are looking to digitize their endpoints, they say, what equipment should I put up there? And the IT team a lot of times says, let's use Cisco. So the good news is with Rumsey and the team here that we're going to market with, we can help answer a lot of these questions in these IT OT meetings, along with your Rumsey and with Julie and her team. So you do have experts that can span and help, turn the dials and talk about widgets on both sides that can help, leverage and provide better security hygiene. But I had a question for Dan and Jim. Everybody probably here on the phone on the WebEx knows Jim. Jim was saying, and by the way, what is the big deal? What is Cisco cyber version versus other technology that's out there in the marketplace? And, give us an idea of the approach and how is it different from other solutions?
Sure. So, first of all, just in general, right, Cisco's IoT portfolio is really made up of taking some of our best in breed and best capabilities from our enterprise brethren. So when you look at a Cisco industrial switch, internally it looks and feels and behaves and can be managed in the exact same way that our traditional campus or enterprise solutions can. And so realistically, going back to the IT and operations working together, that really goes a long way in terms of being able to provide that consistent experience and continue to manage these solutions at scale. Specifically around CyberVision, the big piece is that Cisco CyberVision, first of all, its goal in life or its job in life is to provide visibility and understanding into what assets are inside the environment. But we take that functionality and those capabilities and we exchange it or integrate with the rest of the Cisco security portfolio, so we can start not only understanding what's out there, but start taking action against those details. Now, one of the big pieces is that CyberVision itself is a two-tier architecture. And what that really means is that our deep packet inspection and our protocol awareness is actually broken apart, so to speak, from the management and user interaction, if you will, that occurs inside the solution. And that enables us the ability to not need to send all this traffic back to some centralized location. And so CyberVision is operating on deep packet inspection or DPI, right? So it needs to receive the traffic and actually analyze it to provide the details. But the portion that does that we refer to as the CyberVision sensor, and the sensor can actually run directly on our networking equipment. So on our industrial Ethernet switches, even on our Catalyst 9300, so the enterprise class switches, as well as our industrial routing portfolio. And what that really enables is that ability to get that full visibility, a look at all the traffic right there where the traffic is actually coming into the network at the first point, and recognize and pull out all those relevant details. And then the sensor is sending that information back up to the other component, the center, in what we refer to as application flow. Essentially, it's metadata. And the reason that's important is that for many customers, when we start talking about deploying a visibility solution, in many cases, there's a need to get the traffic back to some centralized location. Was actually just earlier this week talking to an organization that has actually stood up essentially a secondary network just to handle all that additional span traffic that they're gathering from those additional details. And so they're spending twice as much on hardware, they're spending twice as much on a day-to-day management, and it really just doesn't scale well. And so by being able to have that functionality built into the network, the same network that's also going to be used to provide the actual security and policy enforcement, it really enables customers to deploy at scale and manage at scale long term.
And what does from a technical perspective, Rockwell made an announcement a few months ago on CyberVision. And what does that mean for customers that currently have Rockwell and are looking to upgrade their Rockwell environments or buy new Rockwell equipment from Rumsey? Dan, I was going to ask you from a technical perspective, what kind of opportunities that give customers?
Sure. Yeah. So first and foremost, being able to tie directly into the rest of the Rockwell portfolio and be both deployed and managed from a Rockwell standpoint absolutely gives customers a great deal of flexibility and a great deal of functionality inside the environment. It also means that, again, that exact same networking equipment that they're going to install with the equipment, with the machines themselves, can also have that functionality built in, right? So it's not an add-on solution. It's core to the actual functionality that is being deployed.
Awesome. And Julia, just from your point of view, what does that mean now that Rockwell's talked about CyberVision working with their endpoints and with you in the field for customers?
So from an overall perspective, we're very excited. It means for us that all the work that Cisco and Rockwell have done together over the last 5, 6, 7 years, maybe it's close to 10 now that they've had the partnership, to bring the latest in networking and switch technology to the factory floor has just extended to monitoring and security. But more important to me is it provides a potential solution to a lot of folks. I mean, over the years, and especially over the 8 years that I've been focusing just on networking, we have had team members like the ones on the phone, customer team members that want to deploy something to the factory floor, that want the visibility, and have attempted to deploy IT solutions for lack of anything else. And it has brought, there's legacy technology out there. There's older technology that just can't handle active scanning and other things. And it has brought networks to its knees. And so we're, excited. Over the years, what I have told customers is, great, let's find you a solution. I don't care what brand it is, as long as it's industrial focus. Like the IT team is used to having this visibility. Let's just not put the IT tools on the plant floor. Let's find something that's industrial focused. And that's been one of my most important talking points with customers, because I don't want anybody to bring their network down, but I want them to have the visibility that's just necessary today. So for me, this is really exciting. It's bringing that partnership to the monitoring and security space, and it's bringing, Rockwell, which everybody knows very well on this phone, the Rockwell base of knowledge about what needs to happen in manufacturing, what would cause issues, what wouldn't, and couples it with tried and true IT technologies. You can't ask for much more than that. So all my worries in the past years about implementing solutions on the factory floor and what that might do kind of go away. That helps.
That's all. That's great. Yeah. So for the team out there, for the customers, does anybody have, can you give a thumbs up if you think that you've gotten some additional information here that we can get a meeting with Julie and the team here to discuss further opportunities or how we can help? Any thumbs up, or you can chat silently too, privately if you want.
And Paul, I think, the most important thing for the folks on the phone is, we talk a lot about visibility because it is hard. It's very hard for us to be called into a security meeting and say, what do I do? What firewall do I need? And we want everybody to have the best security solutions and kind of a holistic view, but that's where it gets overwhelming. So one of the things I was hoping to convey during the call today is kind of one of your panelists is, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. Visibility is a key starting point. So that's great. And that's why we're mentioning that technology. But, just start conversations is also a great starting point. And we'll see, you can see where your security journey goes. But it doesn't have to be kind of that overwhelming spot. There are steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's just not a book. It's not black and white, but there are steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Hopefully you got some
That's
of those.
Great. Yeah, that was awesome. And anybody want to come off mute, have a question for Julia, for the team? Feel free to do it now. Jim told me we had 50 minutes to complete this webinar, so the trains are on time.
So we did have
So
a question just come in, if I could address that real
Yes.
quick. So we had a customer that just asked us about implementing Factory Talk Asset Inventory or Asset Center, and how does that compare to something like Cybervision? So Asset Center is an excellent part of the onion. So for those not familiar on the phone, Factory Talk Asset Center provides you a full inventory of what your controls products are. And it also provides you really great policy and change management. So you know, in terms of who is making changes to your control system program, who is doing it, what change was made, and it gives you logs and documentations of all of that. Really, really important just for maintaining your control systems, for determining who can do what, and for having records of what has changed should anything go awry. That's a great couple with when somebody made that change, what did it do to the network? And were there communications that were unexpected? Are there other protocols or things happening on the network? Are two devices now communicating to each other that should not be communicating, because that opens up a vulnerability? And so that is a kind of a separate piece, but it layers really nicely together with Asset Center. Now, Asset Center has also pulled in some things around vulnerability, like security vulnerability announcements. So you can see your devices if there's some vulnerability announcements, but it's not going to couple it. It's going to give you kind of facts and time, which is a great information to have, but it's not going to couple it with what's actually happening from an overall network perspective. So one piece, they're each pieces of the puzzle.
And I had a question here too that was sent to me, Julia. Maybe Julia and Dan can help with this. That what the switches that are currently on Rockwell equipment are called Stratix. What type of switches are there, and does this Cybervision solution work in conjunction with those switches?
Yeah, so a couple pieces. So for environments that may have either older equipment or the I'll say the not higher end Stratix switches that are available from Rockwell, we do have other solutions in terms of an out of band type of sensor that can be deployed. But in terms of platforms that actually run and host the sensor itself, from a Stratix standpoint, that's the Stratix 5800, which Rockwell announced, I want to say it was last year at Automation Fair, and has just recently begun shipping. So in terms of actually running that sensor functionality, it's the Stratix 5800 from the Rockwell standpoint.
And just so you know, those are Cisco switches basically under the covers, right?
Yeah, so hardware-wise and functionality-wise, it's the IE 3400 or Industrial Ethernet 3400 equivalent. So correct. Those are dual band.
And just if I could clarify a little there, Dan, those are switches that have Cybervision technology built into them, but Cybervision, the solution of Cybervision will work whether you have those switches or not. You implement it using sensors and some other things. Is that correct?
Correct. That was what I was trying to say, but you said it much better. Thank you.
Sorry, no, you're good. I had another question come in here about best practices, and I'll maybe turn this to Cisco, or I can add some comments, but what are some best practices for organizations when looking for a firm to conduct penetration testing, so pen testing of production or office networks, which I think actually might be kind of two different pieces, but what are some best practices when looking for partners to conduct pen testing? And I can kind of start some commentary if anybody else there, but to me, the most important thing, and I think pen testing is really important in your journey, you have to decide where the right place is. I'm not sure that pen testing is the first thing that you should do, but there is a spot for pen testing with the production environment and production offices. And it goes to the same comment that I said earlier. Please find a partner that has done work on the manufacturing floor before. It doesn't have to be all that they do. IT firms have great knowledge. They often think we're like 10 years behind in manufacturing, which we are from a networking perspective, but just find somebody that has done work on the manufacturing floor, because they will be looking to pen test different things, and they will know what they can and can't do in terms of having an impact to the network.
And Julie, I'll just echo what you just said, right? The realistically speaking, pen testing is a good way to validate that your security controls are in fact protecting what you think they're protecting. But that's obviously not day one, right? So I've seen organizations hire firms to perform pen testing in the operations space, and for lack of a better term, it usually comes across as yes, water is wet, right? We know that industrial protocols are completely unsecured. We know that if you send a stop command to a PLC, it's going to listen to you and stop, right? So realistically speaking, pen testing is a great methodology for validating and confirming that your security controls that you have in place are in fact functioning. But you need to have those controls in place before you're really going to see value from those types of activities, my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. Often it will tell you things, water is wet, these are unsecured, and we do know that. So it's good after you've started the journey to then do it as a follow-on so you can keep evolving your security posture. But I guess the other thing I would add, one quick suggestion there, the other thing I would add is also look for an organization that has done, design work in the manufacturing environment. So the other thing is it's really great to get the results of a pen test, but you want a partner that can then help you take the next step. Because I have used the word overwhelming 600 times. Often folks will do an assessment and then the results become overwhelming. The same thing could happen with a pen test. It becomes overwhelming. You need somebody that can help you translate that and then put okay, this is the results of the pen test. Here's 1, 2, and 3 that you can take from that. And they know how to implement that in a manufacturing environment.
And Julia, just so the audience knows here from a Cisco relationship perspective, you guys are a partner. You resell the solutions we were talking about today, and we partner up with you on customer visits or anything that you need from strategy or some of these next steps. We're here to work with you and your customers and the entire Rumsey team, which is exciting for us. This is the first week of our new fiscal year. So we're here to kick it off in a big way with this webinar and help you guys out in the field with your opportunities and with your customers. So we have 4 minutes left if I see Eastern time correctly. So I've got the quiz question, and I think Julia's gonna like the quiz question. So the first person that chats to me or puts in the chat room their email address so that we can get your address to send the kit. And again, it comes with a whole helmet and all kinds of other stuff. So the quiz question is, what is the #1 reason for inaction when it comes to updating your security processes? I think Julia said she said it like 600 times today. So what is the #1 reason for inaction when it comes to rolling out new security? Okay, you got it. Too much information, being overwhelmed. But you know what, Julia? I'm going to remember that forever. I like that. You're overwhelmed. Put together a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-step plan and work with the right resources to help you along the way for sure. So we had 2. Okay, CapEx is another good one, but I was looking for actually overwhelmed. So you can see that. So
CapEx is a good one, though. I agree.
Yeah. DMWA, if you could put your email in the chat room, that would be great so we can send the gift package out to you. So we have 3 minutes left. Everybody here is on mute, but let's just get a round of thumbs up. Did this help? Was this a helpful webinar? Okay, good. Wow. I like the clapping. John Crowley from Cisco, you don't count for saying it was a good webinar. You were forced to be here. So,
I just
Julia,
like using the little, reactions. That's all.
I do too.
So, Julia, as our ambassador from Rumsey, any closing comments for the customers out here?
No, I mean, I don't have a lot of closing comments. Just let us know how we can help. We understand where you guys are. We have worked with a lot of folks that are anywhere from step 1 to step 10. And we are proud to have a great set of partners in the network and security space, including Cisco, including Rockwell, including a few others that are doing security services specifically. So, no matter where you are, let us know. We can probably help. I think, Nicole, maybe you have a slide with an email address you can pop up there if you guys have any specific questions that have come from this call or just in general. The Rumsey team can be reached at an email address, ciscoteam@rumsey.com. Hopefully that's easy to remember. And we can forward that on to, the Cisco team if we need to, or anybody else, but that will get you communicating with us. So specific questions, if you want to do, Cisco does workshops too, kind of just overall conversations and workshops. We're happy to help facilitate that. So no, nothing real specific, Paul. Just anything we can do to help you move along. We're happy to do it.
Awesome. So everybody, we appreciate your time. We know that you spent an hour with your lunch, so we're sure that you're thinking about your inboxes and your chats and your texts on your phones. So on behalf of Cisco, thank you, Rumsey. Thank you, customers, for allowing us to participate. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Try to make it longer than expected, and really looking forward to seeing you out physically out in the field in your local area. So appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Cisco Rumsey teams. Thank you.
We'll see ya. Bye-bye.